King David never let anything stand in his way as he clawed his way out of the mean streets. If it took busting an old lady's head wide open with a Coke bottle for her last dollar, so be it. Whatever it took. Then he made it big, only to find others had not forgotten, had no intention of forgiving. They came after him. He left behind a Cadillac and a diary, left it to a writer, Donald Goines, called Paul Pawlowski. Like all Goines novels, Never Die Alone is based on truth. Greetings and welcome to Ralph Reads, brought to you by TURN, the United Ronin Networks. My name is Ralph Anthony Garcia, also known as R4. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe to the United Ronin Networks. We are Ronin. Today on Ralph Reads, I continue to bring this classic miniseries, Never Die Alone, written by Mr. Donald Goines, published in 1974 by Holloway House, a Kensington publishing corporation. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let the reading commence. Chapter 5. Paul Pawlowski leaned down beside the well-dressed black man. Blood was seeping through the man's light dress shirt. As Paul's face drew near, the man gasped. "Help me to my car, mister. I don't want to die laying in no gutter." King David gripped Paul's arm firmly. "I'll pay you, mister. Don't mind paying. Just don't want to die alone in the street." Paul pulled back the shirt and examined the wounds. Instantly, he knew the man at his feet had spoken the truth. He was going to die. The wound in his chest alone had been enough to kill him. Paul glanced down at the hand on his arm. It was bloody, dripping with blood. When Paul pried the fingers loose, there was a ring of blood around his sleeve. "My car's at the curb. Help me, friend." King could feel his strength leaving. "Please, mister," he begged. He had seen too many black men bleed their life's blood out on a dirty floor of a pool room or inside some dimly lit nightclub. Paul glanced over at the expensive car near the curb. What the hell, he told himself. If the guy wanted to die in his own car, at least he could help the poor bastard die where he chose. Slowly and with care, Paul lifted the man. The man in his arms made a deep moan as Paul steadied himself with the load. He made his way slowly toward the car. He was careful as he placed the man down inside the automobile. Paul ran around the car and jumped in behind the steering wheel. He doubted whether his patient would hold up that long, but since they were in the car, they might as well rush over to the nearest hospital. Paul didn't have to search for the keys. They were already in the ignition. He started the motor. The sound of the wounded man's voice came to him clearly. "Ain't no use, man. I done cashed in the big ticket." King David's voice got weaker as he continued. "Life's a bitch, man. It just ain't no win. Yeah, I thought I had Jesus in the jug, you know what I mean? No looking back. Done stung for all the bread a nigga needs to get over with. Now this shit come up out of nowhere, can you dig it?" He tried to laugh, but blood rushing out of his mouth choked him. "Just take it easy, fella," Paul said as he expertly drove the big car in and out of the light evening traffic. "It won't be long before I have you at hospital. Then everything will be all right." This time, King David did manage to laugh. "Big fucking deal, man," he answered dryly. "It wouldn't make any difference if we were at 2 hospitals right now." Ain't nothing a doctor can do for me now, man. I done bought the big ticket. It ain't but one more step left for me. The wounded man fell silent. His last words seemed to linger in the air. Paul tried to change the mood. I don't know about that, buddy. You can never tell. I glanced at your wounds, and I've seen guys live with worse ones. Paul knew that the wounded man knew that he was lying. Okay, brother, King David stated. Have it your way. I just don't want to die alone. That's all. Just picturing myself stretched out in that fucking street dying alone is damn near too much to bear. Don't think about it, Paul cautioned sharply. Think about getting patched up. Why don't you try to save some of your strength? Don't talk so much. You ain't doing nothing but wearing yourself out. As the car went over a slight bump in the street, King David let out a grunt. His face twisted up hideously from the pain. Talking helps to take my mind off the motherfucking pain, man. It's all I got left. Life is a motherfucking bitch, man, he stated again, this time more bitterly than before. It's not fair. I mean, a guy busts his shit, his whole ass, trying to reach up and pull himself out of the fucking gutters. And then when he can finally see some kind of light, some shit like this happens. Nah, baby, it ain't right. Just ain't right. It couldn't happen to nobody else but me. Tears rolled down the man's cheeks as he talked. All I've been through, everything I've done, man. I mean, ain't no way it should end like this. This ain't got to be the end, Paul stated feebly. He realized that he was just using words, saying anything to fill the void. King David continued as if Paul hadn't spoken. I've always tried to be honest with myself, but now, when I'm face to face with the final act, I can't accept it. Not this. He broke down and began to sob. Deep sobs, the kind that no one should ever witness of another. Paul glanced at the man out of the corner of his eyes. Dumb! He cursed. It looked like King David had taken a bath in blood. His suit coat was completely covered from where it had seeped through his shedded shirt. Even the upholstery in the car was covered with the dark reddish stain of blood. Where King David's arm rested on the front seat, a small pool of blood had formed. Christ almighty, Paul swore. How much blood can this guy lose without passing out? If he doesn't die from the stab wounds, the poor bastard will bleed to death before we get to hospital. As he took another quick look at the wounded man, Paul thought that the injured man had finally passed away. King David's head had dropped onto his chest, and it appeared as if he had stopped breathing. But it was not death that closed the man's mouth. The pain had finally reached unbearable stages. King David closed his eyes and gritted his teeth. He tried to slump back against the door padding. Maybe if he laid in another position, it would ease some of the hurt. He tried to breathe lightly, but every time he took any kind of deep breath, he could feel the pain all over his chest. This dying shit is one hell of a job, King David managed to say. Somehow talking seemed to relieve the pain. Paul stared over at the man in astonishment. He was surprised that the man was still alive and noticed that the man's voice was growing much weaker. It wouldn't be long now, he reflected. Just hold on a little longer, Paul stated as he pressed down harder on the gas pedal. Hospital is just a couple of blocks away. When they had first got in the car, he wouldn't have taken odds that the man would live to reach the hospital. He had just been going through the motions. You know, If it hadn't been for you, mister, I'd still be laying back there in the street. It wasn't nothing anybody else wouldn't do. I just happened to be the one that came along at the time, that's all," Paul stated. King David didn't waste his strength answering, but both men knew that the statement was a lie. He would have lain in the gutter until the police arrived. Then they would have left him there while they called for an ambulance. No way in the world would they have put him in the police car bleeding the way he was bleeding. He would have lain there and died in the gutter. The thing he had always feared. Paul had been the one person in 100, a man who didn't mind getting involved. King David knew that a black man wouldn't have taken the chance. The average black man would have crossed the street and hurried on his way before he'd allowed himself to get involved in a murder. For one of the few times in his life, King David felt gratitude. It was a strange feeling for him. He was a man used to playing on people who were unlucky enough to cross his path. He took kindness for weakness, friendship as an opportunity to take advantage of the person foolish enough to offer it. The pain in his body was everywhere. Never before had he hurt like he was hurting now. The sight of the hospital gave him a sense of relief. He tried to blank out the pain as they entered the lane that led to the emergency entrance. The emergency ward was at the rear of the hospital. Paul drove the car down to the back doors and parked next to an ambulance. As he got out and ran around the car, he waved to an attendant standing on the back dock taking a smoke. "Hey, buddy! How about you giving me a hand here? I've got a man who's hurt real bad." Paul opened the door on the passenger side. The short Negro on the dock came down the ramp pushing a wheelchair. The man let out a whistle when he saw all the blood on King David. "Looks like somebody's been butchering steers inside that car," he said as he maneuvered the wheelchair into place. Paul didn't bother to answer the man as he reached in and grabbed King David under the armpits. Both men tried to lift him as gently as possible, but a cry of pain escaped from the wounded man as they lifted him from the car. When they set him down in the wheelchair, his head dropped down over his chest. As Paul straightened up from placing King David's feet together on the wheelchair footrest, he looked at the head resting lifelessly on his chest. At once, Paul believed the man had finally died. "Looks like he didn't make it to hospital after all," Paul said quietly. "He ain't dead," the orderly stated flatly as he began to push the chair toward the ramp. "You better park your car back out of the way, then come on in. I'll take him on ahead and get some doctors to start work on him as soon as possible." Without another word, the man rushed on up the ramp, pushing the wheelchair as fast as he could. Paul glanced around quickly, trying to spot somewhere to park the car. He got in and drove slowly back around to the visitors' parking lot. For a minute, he was undecided on what to do. It would be easier just to leave the car and go on about his business. That way, he wouldn't become any more involved than he was already. After all, he had done all that he could do. It didn't make any sense to get any more involved, but someone should know where the man's car was, he reasoned. After parking, he walked slowly towards the entrance of the hospital. As soon as he entered, the short black orderly rushed up to him. "What's your name?" the man asked quickly. Paul hesitated, then gave it to him. He watched the man hurry off toward the rear of the hospital. As he stood in the hallway, an officer walked up to him. "You're the guy who brought the Negro in who was all cut up, aren't you?" the white policeman inquired in a harsh voice. For a minute, Paul didn't want to answer, but finally he shook his head in agreement. "Yeah, I saw him in front of the building where I live and rushed him down here." The policeman removed a pencil from his pocket. "Well, I'm going to have to make a report on it, so you might as well relax. You and I are going to be here together for a few minutes." Paul let out a sigh. "I knew it was coming," he said quietly. "Before this shit stops, I'm going to wish that I have never gotten involved." The tall, red-faced officer grinned, revealing yellow teeth. "Yeah, well, it's too late to cry over spilled milk now. If you don't want to get involved, you should have left the nigger laying in the street." Paul glanced up at the man. "Would you have left him lying in the street?" he asked, and knew the answer at once. "Well, I'll tell you this much," the officer began. "I wouldn't have gotten his blood all over my clothes." For the first time, Paul glanced down and saw the front of his only suit covered with dark spots of blood. The sight of blood on his clothes didn't anger him half as much as the officer's attitude. He tried to conceal his anger, but it was difficult to keep it out of his voice. "Okay, so I got a little blood on my clothes. You think that's more important than trying to save a guy's life?" The white officer laughed. "If the shoe had been on the other foot, you think that guy back there would have gone through the trouble of getting his clothes bloody while rushing you to the hospital? Ha! You can bet your ass he wouldn't have gave a fuck. If anything, he'd have been busy trying to beat you out of your wallet or something." Before Paul could give his angry reply, the orderly rushed up. In his hands, he was holding an envelope. "Hey, mate, you done hit a gold mine." Paul glanced around at him, not understanding what the man was saying. "How's the guy I brought in?" The orderly shook his head. "Passed away, buddy. There was nothing the doctors could do for him. He had been cut up way too many times. I'm surprised he lived as long as he did." The white officer and Paul stared at each other. The thought of the man dying left an empty feeling inside Paul. He hadn't known the man, but he had hoped, even though his common sense told him the man couldn't live, that by some luck he might pull through. It hadn't happened, and now it was all for nothing. But not really, Paul remembered. The man hadn't wanted to die in the gutter, so Paul had saved him from that fate. The orderly held out the envelope. "Here, mate. The guy made you his beneficiary. That's why I needed your name. He had the doctors as witnesses and left you everything, even the problem of burying him." At once, before the orderly could say any more, the policeman burst out laughing. Paul looked at him angrily, but the orderly was serious. His eyes were cold and angry. "It ain't no welfare case, mate. He left you enough money to bury him with." The orderly glared around at the officer. "Yeah, mate. From what I witnessed, I'd say you came out of the deal damn good. The poor guy knew he couldn't live, so he spent the last few minutes of his time trying to repay you for the trouble you went through. In this envelope is some cash money plus the pink slip to his car. He signed it over to you. Seems as if it's paid for. He had the doctors witness everything he did. He also said to tell you that he had some notes he'd written down about himself and that he hoped you wouldn't destroy them without reading some of it." The orderly handed Paul the envelope. "You'll find enough money inside to bury him properly if you should decide to follow his wishes." "Hey, wait a minute there," the policeman said. "I don't know if this is right or not. You had better give that envelope to me. After I check it out with my office, then I'll let you know if it's all right or not." Before the officer could reach out and take it, the orderly yanked it back. "Maybe you didn't hear what I said, officer. I said the man had the doctors sign as witnesses. So you don't have a damn thing to do with what's in this envelope. The man left it to this guy. It was his last request. He did it so that he wouldn't have to be buried by the city. And here you are trying to spoil it all. No way! I mean it. If I were to give this to you, it would be tied up downtown until after this man is buried, and his last wish would be spoiled. Now, you haven't any right whatsoever to his belongings. They go to his nearest kin, or wife, or whatever. And since the man had 3 1, 2, 3. Doctor signed a note to the effect that he was in his right mind. You are way out of line trying to take his last request from him. The orderly turned to Paul. Nobody can force you to spend the money he left you to bury him. But I do hope you will see to it that he doesn't have to be buried by the city. He asked me to tell you this. Paul shook his head dumbfoundedly. Things were happening too damn fast for him to really know what was up or down. If he left enough money to buy a casket, I'll get it for him. And if that's not enough, I'll sell the car and raise the money. I'll give you my word on it, Paul said, and took the envelope from the orderly. As he walked towards the front entrance of the hospital, the orderly relaxed. For some reason, he believed the tall young white man would keep his word. Paul didn't open the envelope until he got home. He waited until he had boiled some coffee and sat down on the edge of the bed. The first thing that fell out was a diamond-studded watch. A large diamond ring came next. Paul smiled. Here were 2 articles he wouldn't have bought himself. He would feel funny if he sold them, so he tried the ring on. It fit tightly on the small finger of his right hand. He slipped the expensive watch on and smiled as he watched the diamonds glitter. Suddenly, the sound of loud music came from downstairs. He knew that the simple-minded girl who worked as a waitress somewhere had finally come home. At times, she would play her record player all night long, as loud as the cheap machine would go. Once, he had been foolish enough to go downstairs and ask her kindly if she would please turn it down, but that had angered her. And for the next 5 nights, she had kept it on all night long just for spite. Now, he knew better. Either he stuck cotton in his ears or he pulled out his typewriter and tried to write until she tired of the music. It was so loud that there was no possible way in the world for him to go to sleep as long as she kept it on. Next to come out of the envelope was King David's wallet. Mike glanced over at his sister sharply. He had never been able to figure out why she disliked Moon so much. The man had never done anything to her, to his knowledge, but for some reason, whenever Moon's name was brought in, she became sarcastic. Even though she had spoken that way about Moon, Edna started the motor up without another word and drove off. She didn't have to go far before she found the pay telephone. She parked in front of it and cut the motor. As Mike jumped out, Blue let out a loud moan. His head fell over on the seat at an angle. Blood and pus ran out of the open wound. Edna turned her head away. If they didn't find help quick, Blue would be a dead man. That was one thing she was sure of. For the 1,000th time, she cursed herself for being foolish enough to get involved with her brother in his stupid revenge. She had forgotten about King David years ago. What had happened should have been left alone. It had been their mother's fault for getting involved with a man like King David. Some traffic came past their parked car, and she scanned the automobiles closely, hoping that their luck would hold and a police car wouldn't cruise by. Edna was positive that someone had called in and given the description of their car to the police after she had sideswiped those other cars. Just the thought of her silly driving made her blush with shame. Edna considered herself an expert driver, so it was a blow to her pride that in her panic she had driven so badly when she should have been at her best. She had always prided herself on her control whenever things got bad. To be cool-headed in the clutches was something to be proud of. On the second ring, a man answered the telephone. Mike quickly asked for Moon after giving his name. In a matter of seconds, Moon was on the other telephone. Moon's voice was soft and full of confidence as he spoke. "Hey, Mike, how's tricks, my man?" Moon asked lightly. From his voice, it wasn't possible for the man on the other end of the line to know that Moon had been pacing the floor in a rage only moments before. He had gotten the news earlier about the hit on King David. He had even called the hospitals until he found which one the white man had taken King David to. He knew King David was dead. He also knew that the license number of the car Mike and Blue had used had been given to the police by an informer who had witnessed the whole damn thing from a window of the bar. What put oil on the fire and put Moon in a rage was that people always talked about things they didn't know about and came up with the wrong answers. The wrong answer that was bothering him was the fact that too many people knew Moon was supposed to have met King David, so they would figure Moon was responsible for the hit. Once it came out that Mike and Blue were responsible for the hit, nobody would believe that Moon didn't have anything to do with it. No matter how much he swore his innocence, people will still hold him to blame. And that wasn't the worst part of it. If Blue or Mike got busted, they could make a deal with the police just by mentioning Moon's name. The police will promise them all kinds of deals if they just involve the big man. While all this was on Moon's mind, he never let a hint of it out to Mike. "Yeah, Mike, what can I do for you, guy?" Moon inquired easily. "Hey, Moon, I need your help, man. I know you told me I was on my own, but we ran into trouble," Mike said quickly. "Yeah, brother, you know you can depend on old Moon, you know that, right?" "What's the deal?" "We ran into a little trouble, Moon. Blue fucked around and got careless and got stabbed. He got stabbed in the motherfucking eye, and I don't know if he's gonna make it or not." Mike spoke quickly, then continued when there was no comment from the other end of the line. "He need a doctor bad, Moon. I mean, he really needs one real bad." "I wish the son of a bitch was dead," Moon thought coldly as he listened. But when he spoke, his words and voice didn't reveal his inner thoughts. "Okay, Mike, don't worry. Them things happen, baby, so just keep your cool." "I knew you wouldn't let me down, Moon. I just knew it, boss." "I don't never let down none of my boys, Mike, and you know you're one of my favorite men, so don't you worry. Old man Moon will take care of everything for you. Now listen, you must still be in the same car, right?" Moon didn't wait for an answer. "And Blue's too hurt to leave the ride and walk or catch a cab, right? So you're going to have to take a chance on driving the car that you're in right now." "I don't think a ride is hot, Moon," Mike replied. "You wouldn't, you stupid bastard," Moon reflected as he listened to Mike before cutting the flow of words off. "Listen, Mike. Okay, maybe the car ain't hot, but just in case, where the hell are you?" He waited until Mike gave him their location. "Okay, fine. There's a parking garage on 110th Street just about 4 blocks from where you're at right now. So you and Blue get the fuck over there and pull inside the motherfucking garage and park in the back of the goddamn motherfucker. You got that? In the rear of the joint, okay? I'm gonna send some boys down there in another car to pick you guys up and get Blue over to a motherfucking doctor that I know of. So just be careful, Mike, and everything will work out alright. Oh yeah, did you pick up my money?" Mike felt his breast pocket. "Yeah, Moon. You know I take care of business. I got it right here in my pocket. Don't you worry about a damn thing." "Don't worry, huh? You stupid son of a bitch," Moon cursed to himself. "Okay then, we ain't got no problems. You just do like I said. Take it easy and drive slow. The boys will be right there, so do not get nervous. You hear me, Mike?" "Hey, Moon," Mike yelled before Moon could hang up. "Say, man, I got my kid sister with me, man. You think I better drop her off first before I get to the garage?" For the first time, Moon blew his cool. "Hell no!" he cursed loudly. "You don't do no dumbass shit like that. The only fucking chance you got right now is having the boy along. If some cop cars should ride past and see her in the car, they might not harass you. But just you and Blue alone? Shit, man. Think it out for yourself, bruh." You say Blue's hurt, didn't you? Moon wiped the sweat off his brow, then picked up a pencil off the bar and began to write out an address as he continued to talk. You keep her with you, Mike. I'll have another guy come along just to drop her off, but she stays with you until the boys get there. You can even fake the people out in the garage by sitting in the car with a broad along. But 2 men? It makes people suspicious. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, I see what you mean, Moon, Mike replied quickly as he glanced out the pay booth at Edna in the car. He could see Blue lying out on the car seat. Even from where he was, Blue did not look good. Okay, then we done wasted enough time rapping, man. Let's get down to business, Moon ordered, then hung up. He turned on the 4 men standing around watching them. Well now, he began. That was the fool there. He's in trouble, and Blue's been hurt. Moon walked around his bar and pushed a button. A panel with glasses on a small ledge began to slide backwards. When it was open, a man sitting on one of the expensive bar stools could see the various weapons hanging from the pegs inside the compartment. Moon reached in and removed 2 sawed-off shotguns and placed them on the bar. He then placed 2 pistols next to the shotguns. Now, I want all 4 of you guys to go along on this deal so that nothing can go wrong. Park in the rear of the garage. I'll have called and made arrangements so that the back door will be open. Park your cars back there. You had better take 2 of them along so that if anything goes wrong, you'll have another way of getting clear. But should nothing go wrong on this deal, Blue is already hurt, so he won't be no problem. And Mike won't be expecting nothing either, so he won't be no trouble. The broad has got to be knocked off along with him. Mike has some cash on him, $1,000, and you boys can keep that. When you guys get back, there will be 4,000 more waiting for you. Again, Moon wiped the sweat off his brow. That's all I can tell you, except be damn sure you kill every last motherfucking one of them. Moon picked up one of the shotguns and held it out to a tall, bald-headed black man. Earl, I want you to be in charge of this little detail, so I'm giving you one of the shatter guns. You can give the other one to whoever you think will handle it right. I just don't want no slip-ups. The slim, dark Negro handled the gun smoothly. It seemed to be a part of him once he took it into his hands.
Don't worry about a thing, Moon. I don't like working with this many people anyway. But for you, anything goes.
He tossed the other shotgun to a short, light-skinned man with bad skin.
Here you go, Red. I trust you enough not to trust you, so you're my best bet.
He grinned at Moon.
Red likes the sight of blood, so he's the ideal man for using one of these here little gems.
Earl laughed loudly at his so-called joke, then started for the door. He didn't bother to look back. The other 2 men removed the pistols from the bar stool and quickly followed the first pair out of the apartment. As soon as he finished talking on the telephone, Mike hurried back to the car. When he opened the door, Blue slumped over on his side. Mike had to lift the unconscious man back up before he could sit down. He stared at the broken blade embedded in Blue's eyeball. The sight of it, and the pus, and the blood leaking out of it was almost enough to make a man vomit. Edna saw the expression on his face.
It sure is a bad-looking wound, ain't it, Mike?
She started the motor.
Well, what did Big Brother say? Is he coming to our rescue?
Yeah! He gave me an address to go to. He's going to have some people pick Blue up and take him over to a doctor that they use for things just like this, Mike stated importantly. I've been telling you, sis, that Moon looks out for the people who work for him. I mean, this ain't no short-stopping organization that Moon runs, Edna. He's big time.
Yeah, I know,
she replied quietly, relieved that the responsibility of taking care of Blue would drop on somebody else's shoulders instead of theirs. She took another long look at Blue, and again the thought entered her mind that he was hurt a lot worse than they imagined him to be. He seemed to have gone into a coma. The way the man moaned and groaned while unconscious revealed to some extent just how serious the man's injury was. Edna had her doubts about whether or not a doctor could help Blue out now. There was one thing she was sure of. He'd never see out that injured eye again. She'd bet money on that. Take your time, sis. We ain't got to go but over to 110th Street, so ain't no reason to speed, Mike stated nervously as he took a quick look over his shoulder. The sound of a police siren in the distance caused both of them to become frightened. Edna started to park the car, but Mike ordered her to keep on driving. It ain't for us, girl. Just keep your cool, Mike cautioned, trying to appear more assured than he actually was.
We just done come so close to being at an end to this shit, Mike. I'd hate for something to happen now,
Edna said as she drove slowly onward. Both of them counted the blocks slowly as they went by.
Just one more to go,
Edna said, speeding up. Yeah, baby. At the next corner, turn right. The garage is on the left-hand side of the street. But slow this goddamn car down, girl! We don't want to get stopped now! He yelled loudly. For a moment, Blue mumbled something, but neither one of the occupants in the car could understand what he had said. Just hold on, Blue. Just hold on, partner, Mike stated as he leaned down and spoke softly in Blue's ear as if that would make the man understand him. The only reaction from Blue was a loud groan. Mike sat up straight, wondering for the first time whether or not his friend was going to make it. It was obvious that Blue was in bad shape. I don't know, Edna, Mike began. I ain't never seen nobody hurt like this before. I mean, I saw guys cut up, but never stabbed in the eye. Damn, it sure as hell looks fucked up, don't it? Edna waited until she made the right-hand turn before answering.
Shit, Mike. I don't even believe a doctor's going to be able to help him. I know he ain't going to ever be able to use that eye again,
she stated as she slowed down and started to watch for the garage. There it is, sis, on the right-hand side of the street. Just pull right up to the door. Somebody will open it from the inside. She followed his orders and pulled up into the driveway. Before they had reached the door, it began to go up. Edna slowly drove inside as the door started to come back down. Just keep on toward the back, Mike ordered. The man who had opened the door waved them on, standing in the doorway of a small office. As the car went past, he sat back down and made a move on the checkerboard that was on the desk. The other elderly man in the office had remained seated in an old wooden chair. He grinned as he moved his hand and picked up a checker and made a jump. Maybe if you had some more customers, you'd make some more dumb moves like that, the old man said as he continued jumping until he had taken 3 pieces. Yeah, his friend replied, his mind drifting away from the simple game they were playing. Maybe that's just what I need. As he spoke, 2 cars pulled up in the alleyway. Earl, in the first car, waved red. The driver of the second car passed. He searched for a good parking place and found one. He had been looking for some place where he wouldn't be blocked in.
Well, Duke,
Earl said to the man next to him,
we might as well get the ball rolling.
Ain't no time like the present, Earl, Duke answered, opening the car door and climbing out. Both men walked side by side until they reached the second car. As Red and his partner Charles got out, Earl spoke directly to Red.
I'm wondering if we might not be better off to leave somebody with the machines to make sure don't nobody double park and block one of us in. What do you think about that?
You might be right, Earl, Red replied quickly. We don't really need no 4 men for this shit. So maybe if we left Charles behind, it would make things go a hell of a lot easier when it came time to get the hell away. I done seen more than one motherfucker get wasted 'cause his ride couldn't be used when he needed it.
Yeah,
Earl said quickly.
I think we better.
He turned to the man with red.
Charles, you get the easy part this time, my man. Just make sure you don't let no punks block either one of the rides in. I guess you can handle that with no problem, can't you?
He didn't wait for the man to answer. Earl started walking down the alley that led to the garage. He felt the sawed-off shotgun under his suit coat, making sure it was in place. When he reached the door of the garage, he stopped and glanced back at the 2 men with him.
Okay,
he said slowly.
This is the way we play it. We don't go in with guns out. We go in, check everything out. Mike don't suspect nothing, so we ain't got no problem. You, Duke, you take care of Blue. Red, you knock the cunt off, and I'll handle Mike. Now, it won't be no fuck up with everybody shooting wildly at whoever he sees. This way, each one of us has a fucking target. Be sure to put at least 2 good slugs into your goddamn target, 'cause Moon don't want no motherfucking mix-up on this one.
Earl waited until both men had nodded their heads in agreement, then pushed open the back door of the garage. Chapter 7. After Paul got his coffee, he sat back on the bed and made himself comfortable as he opened the diary again. He noticed at once that it had been written in the first person, but after that, he forgot to read it with a critical eye for grammar or spelling because he became too interested in what he read. My plans have been made, so today should be my last day in New York. If everything goes right, I should be on my way on the evening flight to California. The only reason I'm delaying my departure is that today's Mother's Day, and I have 2 women who receive checks. There's also the chance of me ripping off Moon for a nice piece of heroin, and it's too good a chance to pass up. For the past 2 months, I've been setting Moon up for Justice Day, so it's been well planned. Well, today I've just went just fine so far. I met Moon up on 127th Street and got 2 pieces of dope from him. He expects the money later on in the day after I collect from the women he thinks I have in my make-believe stable. It took a while to get him to the point where he would trust me with so much dope, but since he knows I don't use, he ain't worried. Far be it, his pride is so big that he doesn't think a nigga would have the nerve to bum him, the dumbass fool. Yes, I wouldn't rip him off if I was planning on staying here, because I know his anger would be out of sight, but Moon ain't nothing but a Harlem hoodlum who would never have the resources to reach as far as the West Coast for someone who has ripped him off. Now that I got all the dope, all that's holding me back now is the mailman. I'm gonna go over to Vera's house now and get a check. After I promise to bring her a piece of dope back for it, she won't be any trouble either. Well, that didn't take long. I wasn't gone but an hour. Stupid bitch was waiting for me with the check. After taking her to get it cashed, then I would be back at her apartment in an hour. As I write this shit, I wonder if anybody would have ever read it and believed that people could be so fucking dumb. Since this morning, I've collected 3 pieces of heroin and a check for $220. Vera has 6 kids, and I do wonder how the dumb bitch is gonna make it without some kind of money. I was even tempted to leave her with $10 or $20, something she could have used to buy some food for the kids. But on second thought, I realized that if I left her with $20, she wouldn't have bought shit. She wouldn't have bought shit for her kids. Hell no! The bitch would have bought some dope to take care of that monkey she got on her back. God damn! But did I have trouble collecting that check from Edna? She didn't want to give me none of it. Told me she had to buy clothes for her children and some other bullshit. Had to kick the shit out of her, plus hit that punk-ass son of hers with a motherfucking bottle. What was his name? Mike? Yeah, I think that's what it is. Had to knock 2 of his front teeth out with a Coke bottle before I could get out of their flat with the money. The old bitch fought like hell for a few dollars, even though she's been giving me part of her check for the last 3 months. Well, that just goes to show you can never figure a cunt out. Here she was, the only one I figured I wouldn't have any trouble with. Just promised her I'll bring her back the money in a day or two, but she wouldn't buy no part of it. Sorry about the trouble, but I'm not taking any chances. Leaving for the airport right now. You can never tell. The bitch might even go to the police. That's all I need right now, a fucking case with the police. If things go well, my next entry in this diary will be from California. Paul laid the diary down and took a sip from his coffee. He shook his head in wonderment. The sounds coming from the downstairs apartment didn't even disturb him as he picked up the diary and continued to read. Arrived in California at 8 o'clock at night. Didn't know a person in Los Angeles, so I just told the cab driver at the airport to take me to a good motel in Hollywood. He dropped me off in front of the Golden Eagle Motel on Wilcox Avenue. After checking in, I counted my bankroll. I had over $700 in my raise, so I didn't have to worry about the rent for a while. Paul read the next page in surprise, then sat the diary down. He stared at the wall for a second, then reread the next page again. That's it! He exclaimed, his voice sounding loud in the empty apartment. The poor son of a bitch was really trying to write a book. No, I wonder just how much of this shit here is real, and how much of this shit is an overworked imagination. Paul studied the handwriting before him. Maybe the guy was really planning on trying to sell this shit to some publisher, Paul reflected. As his coffee began to cool, Paul drained the last of it from his cup. He picked the diary up and continued from where he had left off. He grinned to himself as he began to read dialogue. Now that King David's diary began to have an exchange of conversation between different people, Paul was sure that King David was either writing his autobiography or had written a pretty good beginning for a work of fiction. The motel room was hip, wall-to-wall carpet, plus a color television with a waterbed. Being on the safe side, I stashed the heroin inside a pair of shorts, then put them in a compartment where I kept my dirty clothes. This was in case I happened to get a Snoopy maid or one that stole. In any case, didn't think she would bother looking inside my dirty laundry bag. Damn! Been laying out in a lawn chair near the pool. This is something a poor black-ass nigga like me ain't used to. And the friendliness of these white chicks out here is unbelievable. If the studs back in the Big Apple only knew how friendly these little white broads are out here, it would be a black tidal wave because of so many black motherfuckers leaving and heading for the sunny shores of Los Angeles. Got to be dressed now. I made a date with a cute blonde I met at the pool. Dinner, then a few drinks at some club she says is mellow. Janet took me to Club 21 near Hollywood and Vine. The inside of the nightclub was something out of a movie. I mean, it's going to take some getting used to after them crummy joints I've been used to hanging out in back home. Janet is something to write home about herself. Blonde, with a shape like a brick shithouse. I ain't never spoke to a white girl that looks this good before, let alone take one out. I think I could have laid the bitch after we got back from clubbing, but I ain't want to rush shit or give her the idea that the only thing I wanted for her was a piece of ass. I also found out her weakness. This fine-ass little bitch likes coke. Well, if she likes coke, I think I got just the thing for her. She also hinted that most of the crowd she ran around with snorted coke. If that's the case, this will just be the break I need to get rid of the heroin I got. I don't think none of the peckerwoods know the difference between girl or boy, so I'm gonna sell them heroin for cocaine if it looks right. The first time I get a chance, I think I'll slip her some boy and see if she knows the difference. If she doesn't, baby, it will be smooth sailing for me. Ain't got but a minute, so I'll just jot this down. Janet is taking me shopping so that I could pick up a bathing suit. Can you dig my black ass, a country boy, laying out next to the swimming pool beside all that fine white trim? It's hard to believe, but true. Gotta go. She just called. Paul grinned as he professionally noticed when the diary stopped being a diary and became a novel. King David must have been a lonely man, Paul reasoned, as he read on. Hi, Janet. Damn, girl. You're even more lovely than what you were last night, if that's possible. She laughed brightly as she stepped into my apartment. Before closing the door, I glanced out to see who had seen her come into my motel room. I noticed 3 women at the pool glancing toward my door, so I knew she hadn't entered without being noticed.
Hi, David. Are you ready to go on a little shopping spree?
Her voice was more husky when she spoke than I had remembered. In just a minute, Janet, I answered as I tried not to stare at her, but it was impossible not to look at the tall, narrow-featured blonde. Her hair was straight like most white girls wore their hair nowadays, hanging down on the shoulders. Every now and then, she tossed her head back to get the hair out of her face. Then you could see her eyes. Her eyes were something else just by themselves. Or maybe it was just me, since I never had a blue-eyed woman before. I was fascinated by them.
Well, honey,
she said, snapping me out of the trance I had fallen into.
Don't you remember me? I'm the same person you brought home at 4 o'clock this morning and left so rudely at my door.
She smiled at me when she said this, kidding me about being so proper, because as I mentioned, I didn't try to get into her pants last night or even this morning. I just took her to her door and then walked around the pool and entered my own room. I grinned back at her. This broad didn't believe in bullshitting. She came right out with it.
I decided to check out my thoughts on the cocaine.
Hey, Janet, don't come down on me so hard, please. I was just wondering, should I offer you a snort of this coke I got, or should I wait until we come back from shopping?
If you know what's good for you, you had better wait until after we get our shopping done. Or there won't be any shopping trip this day once I get some of that cocaine up my big nose,
she stated in her husky voice, then rolled her eye toward the bed.
Well, David, I don't think I'm going to have to spell it out for you, am I?
We both laughed at that. She looked so serious when she rolled her eyes toward the bed that I couldn't help but take her in my arms. We kissed slowly at first. Then, as I felt her fingers moving up and down my back, I crushed her in my arms. I could feel her legs spread as we stood tightly embraced. The tight mini skirt she had on only aroused me more as I felt her long legs pressing against me. As my bone grew harder, I pushed her back from me. Shit! I cursed. You talk about not going shopping? If you kiss me like that again, we won't leave here for a couple of weeks. Her beautiful eyes seemed to become smoky as she stared into mine.
That sounds fine to me, David. But those nosy bitches out at the pool were watching me so close when I came in that I would like to go back out as soon as possible so that their nasty little minds can run amok wondering what we are doing.
Do you care? I asked seriously.
Not really,
she replied quickly. Oh shit! Let's get that fucking shopping trip over with then, I said quickly, now impatient to get her back and lay her out on the waterbed. When we left my place, the women at the pool had been joined by 2 white dudes who stared at me angrily. I could see the anger in their eyes from where we talked, which was over 50 feet from the pool. I'm gonna have to rent me a car so that I could get around, I told Janet as we reached the street.
I see you're not planning on taking me up on my offer,
she said, leading me over to the old 1961 Pontiac she drove.
Whenever you need transportation, it's here, though I realize it's not the latest model car on the road.
After she mentioned it, I remembered that she had offered to have a set of keys made for me last night. It had completely slipped my mind. Nah, honey, it's not like that. Until I can find my way around, I might just take you up on the offer. I found a pair of swimming trunks at the second store we entered, but by then I was caught up in the shopping spree. 2 hours later, we stopped at a restaurant and had a steak dinner with lobster. Now that's a real treat for a New Yorker. Imagine having lobster with steak for less than $5. Last, we both ordered Jell-O, which none of us had room for, but it was such a wonderful afternoon that neither one of us wanted to bring it to a close. From what I'm writing here, you might get the impression that I was falling in love. Well, there wasn't no corny shit like that happening. It was just the newness of everything. Here I hadn't been in California 3 days, yet I had damn near caught me a white girl that looked like a movie star. Oh yeah, By the way, if I haven't mentioned it, I will now. Janet worked on a television show. Can you dig it? The bitch had got a job on TV. We hadn't gotten around to rapping on what kind of bread she made. She mentioned the fact to me that she worked on a program that came on once a week. I kind of faked her out when she mentioned it, you know. So what? Big deal. And all of that shit like it was nothing. While all the time I was creaming in my motherfucking pants. The bitch had to make fair paper no matter how small a part she had on the program. Janet didn't drink, so I didn't really need any oil, but I picked up a pint of gin anyway, just so that I would have it around the pad. Next, we went over to a friend of hers, and she ran in and bought, or they gave her, a bag of reefer.
Oh, shit!
She cried as we drove back to the motel.
I haven't got any papers, David.
She took her eyes off her driving and glanced at me. God damn! I exploded as she nearly ran into an oncoming car. Don't get us killed over it. Just stop at the first drugstore you see, Janet, and I'll run in and pick up some papers. I have to make a note of this, since I'm from Harlem, back east. They don't really have drugstores out here like we do back home. Mostly, it's whiskey stores, unless you go to one of the large chain store drugstores, yet it seems to work out okay. We arrived at the motel and quickly got in the fucking bed. Ain't no sense in me writing all that went down, cause then whoever ends up reading this will think I was some kind of nut. What needs to be stated is the way she flipped over the heroin. Since it was China White, she couldn't tell the goddamn difference. In a matter of minutes, her head dropped on her beautiful tits and she was in a dope fiend's nod. Then I watched her closely as she lifted her head and said,
Damn, Dave. This sure is some strong coke, honey. Maybe you should try cutting it more.
I had to fight back the laughter that came to my lips. It was going as sweet as I could possibly hope for it to go. The dirty son of a bitch, Paul mumbled as he continued to read the diary. A loud disturbance in the hallway caused Paul to get up from his bed and open the door of his room. He watched the homosexual who stayed next door to him perform his weekly show. The sissy was completely naked except for a large butcher knife he held in his right hand. He was cursing at a tall, dark-skinned man who Paul recognized as the homo's steady boyfriend. The tall, dark young man was drunk, but not too drunk not to know the sissy had a knife. As the homosexual's voice began to rise shrilly, Paul closed the door. He had seen this act too many times in the past. He knew that eventually the sissy would stop waving a knife or manage to run the tall man back into their small room. After that, there will be the sounds of sex coming through the walls, with the sissy screaming at the top of his voice in joy. What a fucking world, Paul whispered as he went back to the bed and picked up the diary again. For a minute, he was tempted to put it down and go to sleep. But for some reason, King David's poor attempt to really write a novel instead of a diary drew him to it. Somewhere in the back of his mind was the thought that it wouldn't take much to really put it in shape, not for him anyway. If it remained interesting, he just might make a complete book out of it. Of course it would take some work, but a man didn't stumble over a good story every day. And from what he had read so far, it might just appeal to some sections of the public. It's been over a week now since I've been giving Janet heroin for cocaine. She still doesn't know the difference. In fact, she has brought me another customer, a young white boy who's supposed to be some kind of director or something out of the studio where she works. At first, I was kind of leery of selling to him, but it worked like a motherfucking charm. His name is Charles Bennett. A tall, long-haired bastard with a narrow face. He is just as dumb as Janet when it came to dope. I sold him heroin for coke and all is well. So far, they haven't found out the difference. And by the time they do, I'll be out of the stuff. Running out of dope? I'm shopping around trying to find a connection. Everybody out here says the Mexicans have the best dope, but since I don't speak Spanish, it's hard to make a connect. That's the only thing that's holding me back. If I could restock my supply of heroin, I might fuck around and get rich off these silly-ass Peckerwoods. Ran into a nigga up in Hollywood last night. I know he uses stuff, so I'm afraid to put my own money in his hand. He says he can cop me some raw stuff. That's what they call pure dope out here. It's supposed to be uncut dope, means you might be able to step on it 2 or 3 times if you are lucky. But the way I see it, if I can find some good drugs and just step on it 1 time and it still be good, I'll clean up, selling it to my white customers for coke. I'm going to meet the nigga at Club 21 this afternoon. Got to get dressed now so that I can take Janet to work. I'll need to use her raggedy-ass car the rest of the day. Just the thought of Janet reminds me the bitch is strung out just about as far as a bitch can get without really knowing it. I think she is beginning to realize it. She was sick yesterday morning. Had to have some dope. Since she only snorts the stuff, it takes a hell of a lot of it to get her straightened out. Oh well, she has helped me out quite a bit, bringing me new customers and shit like that. So I don't mind giving the bitch credit whenever she asks for it. But my bag is getting damn near empty. If I should run out of the stuff, the 4 honkies I got copping from me will realize that they are strung out, because every fucking one of them will end up sick as hell if I don't see to it that they get some drugs each and every day. Well, that problem is over now. I took the brother out to Watts. God damn, but it's a fucking ghetto out there. It looks like something out of Mississippi. All they got is small-ass houses with niggas hanging out on every corner. Yet, I felt at home when I was out there. I guess it shows that you can take a nigga out of the country, but you can't get the country out of a nigga. I want to let the brother out of my sight with the money. So he had to take me in and introduce me to his goddamn connect. He told the man we were brothers, real ones at that. The nigga went along with it anyway and sold me some drugs. I let my junkie test the dope for me after I just put 1 on it. Even after the nigga swore I could put 2 on it, I still just cut it 1 time. It's good dope with 1 cut of mix on it. I'm going to have to use a lot of milk sugar to get it as white as I want it to be so they could pass for cocaine. I spent $150 for a quarter piece of raw dope. Didn't cut but one $50 raw balloon, saving the rest until I got back to my place so that I could put the milk sugar on it, plus the rest of the white dope I got. Had I been thinking before, I would have copped sooner. That way, I could have used my China white dope to cut the dark brown shit they sell out here for heroin. Had a hard time getting rid of the nigga who took me out to Watts. He wanted to follow me home, like I was fool enough to let a nigga like that know where I stay. I had to threaten to put my foot in his ass if he didn't get the fuck out the car when I got back to Hollywood. Promised him that whenever I was ready to cop, I'll call him up so he could go along and test my dope for me. So it ain't just a lie I told him. I might just really need him. Took his phone number just in case. Somebody gotta test this shit, cause I sure as hell wasn't going to. I got to respect King Heroin. Seen it not too many boss players on their ass for me to ever make the mistake and put the needle in my arm even 1 time. As the dope fiends say, once is too many, 1,000 times is not enough, and I believe them. They should know heroin's to be sold, not used. Well, happy days are here. Just gave Janet a free sample of my new shit. This ignorant bitch loved the shit out of it. Just goes to show you, people love that witch they can't control. Anyway, I fixed up 8 $25 balloons for Janet to take along with her to work. She sold at least $200 worth of dope a day at the studio for me. It was one hell of a setup I had going. String out half the honkies that work on a daily television show. Sometimes I watch the show and try to figure out which one of the white actors are junkies. I know there are at least 4 of them. The sight of them tickles the shit out of me because I know I could bring their little playhouse crumbling down around their fucking heads whenever I feel like pulling the string. Paul closed the diary slowly, shaking his head. What kind of son of a bitch was King David, he wondered, as he stretched out on the bed and trying to find some sleep. But sleep didn't come quickly. The words in the diary kept coming back to him, and he realized he wanted to know why King David was killed. We have reached the end of this episode of Ralph Reads. I would like, or rather love, to thank my queens and kings, fellow royalty, for stopping by. You can contact me on Facebook, Ralph Anthony Garcia, Twitter, Instagram, and Periscope at RGMC2407. Email me, rgmc2407@gmail.com, where if you would like to leave a small donation, please use the Zelle app or paypal.me/rgmc2407 or the Cash App. My cash tag is rgmc2407. You can also find me on my other channel, RGMC, Ralph Garcia, Master of Ceremonies, and right here on the United Ronin Networks. We are Ronin. Fellow royalty, pick up a good book, read a good story, and set your good self free. I appreciate you, and I love you like cooked food. I will see you fellow sexy people on the continuation of this Donald Goines miniseries on Ralph Reads. See you soon.